Welcome to the Chicago Bears Podcast, a presentation of ESPN Chicago, Chicago's home for sports. Here's your host, Pat, the designer.
Bird on, Bears fans. We got a full house in the building today for a Friday schedule reaction edition of the Chicago Bears Podcast. Carmen Jurko are in the building, host of the Carmen and Jurko Show. Boys, what's going on?
I got him. I'm not as optimistic as most. I got him 15-2. So.
15-2.
Not as optimistic.
Thank heavens you put a couple losses in there.
15-2.
You're going all in on
most
this.
people have
You put a
16-1.
couple of losses in there. I got him 9-8, 10-7.
9-8, 10-7.
Yeah, I mean, it could be obviously 8-9, but I think they're in that range, 8-10, somewhere right there.
Got a good start.
And I think that's being realistic. Sorry, Pat.
Oh, you're all good. Got a good start to the pod. We got the predictions already. We're going to talk about how this schedule lays out for the Bears this season. Also, what are our early expectations? You've heard some of them here, but realistically, before the bye, how do we think this team is going to end up being? Should the Bears be a playoff team? Should they be in the hunt for being a playoff team? We'll talk about that. And then finally get into plans for opening weekend of Bears-Packers. Anything special planned? We'll talk about all that and more on today's episode of the Chicago Bears Podcast. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the page. Let's get into the show. First quarter. All right, boys. Bears have a really – when the schedule came out, the most important thing for me was the layout of the schedule.
Yeah.
How these teams fell, where guys were going to be, how things were, what team we were going to have before, after the bye, when the bye hits. And I'm not going to lie, when I saw how things start to lay out, I see some early tests, but I don't feel like the schedule is insurmountable. What were your thoughts on the Bears schedule when you saw it? Do you think that this is a favorable schedule for the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I know 3 of their first 5 games are on the road, and it's never, as Jurko will always tell you, it's never easy winning on the road in this league. But home field advantage, for whatever reason, over the last couple of years, the margin is really shrunk.
Yeah.
It certainly did in the COVID year. You understand that there were no fans in the stands, but we even have more data, not just the COVID year, that indicates home field advantage. The margin continues to get smaller and smaller, and no longer does Vegas just sort of bake in that old 3-point line. That is a thing of the past. Yes. It is not 3 points anymore.
Especially
it's much lower than that.
Field.
Yeah. Well, you know what stands out real quick, guys? I mean, that in the first 2 weeks in the look-ahead lines, the Bears are favored.
Yeah.
They weren't favored, period, that often the last couple years. They haven't been a favorite against the Packers since the opener in September of 2019, coming off their division win. They lost that game. That was that ugly week 1 loss, 10-3. So it's the first time in a long time they've been a favorite against the Packers. You understand why. They go to Tampa in week 2 with Tom Brady being gone. Again, you probably understand why they're a small favorite there. So I think it plays out okay. Look, they've got the 5th easiest schedule as we start the 2023 season, and that's based off of not last year's win totals. Don't ever go off of the previous years.
Because I was going to say, I think previous year's strength of schedule is like 0.497.
Don't ever do that.
Like
Don't ever go off of the previous year's record. Go off of the Vegas projected win totals. You will end up being much more accurate. Go off of Vegas's projected win total. So all their opponents and what Vegas projects for each of their opponents in terms of wins, and base your strength of schedule that way. And if you do it that way, and that's the smart way to do it, it's the way pro gamblers do it, the Bears have the 5th easiest schedule in the NFL.
When I take a look at it, I look at the 4 or 5 on the road starting October 29th through the 27th. That's going to be their tough stretch. You go play the Chargers. I don't care how good I think the Bears are. They're going to go to the Chargers. They're going to get beat. Then you go to New Orleans, which is a winnable game. You come home and play a pitiful Carolina Panthers team that might be the second worst team in football.
Why is Carolina the second worst team in football?
I just think they are. I just think
they
that's
won
what
7
they're
games
end up.
last
I was going to say they dropped off that far.
I saw a projection this year for the Carolina Panthers. They had them at 3-14. Early projection.
I would love it.
Early projection by somebody from.
I love it. I hope so.
That's an early projection by somebody from Carolina filling out their chart.
Yeah.
All right.
Even adding Thielen, still having Burns and all
but
that.
At home, I think that's a victory. Then you go to Detroit, you go to Minnesota.
Yeah.
So that's your 4 or 5 game stretch that's going to be ugly. So before then, that's when you got to do your work. I told you in 2018 they were 3-3. And you go back historically, this team usually gets off to a 3-3, 3-4, 4-3 start in the first 6-7 games. They do.
They have.
Historically.
True.
Then you get hot or you go cold. They went cold last year. They got hot in 2018. Right. So to me, they've got to get hot early. They could be 4-2, 4-1 through those first 5 or 3-2. Then you get the Vikings and the Raiders at home before you go on. So you need to get your victories early if you're going to be competitive throughout, and then find a way to steal some stuff on the road when you go on the road.
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah, you can't go through it going win, 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 win. Yeah. I'll go through it in games of 5 and see what you can get. The first 5 go through, the second 5. Then after that, depending upon what type of team you are and whether you're building momentum or not, that's when you really start stringing wins together. We saw that, wins or losses.
Yeah.
We saw it last year. A lot of teams string some wins to make the playoffs at the end of the year, and a lot of teams that were sitting there at 6-3 and 7-3 and found a way to miss the playoffs. So
100%. I mean, the Titans, right? Like we talked about the Titans at the beginning of the season, like they were gonna be dominant, and then it dropped out.
Look at the Jets.
Yeah, well, man, the Jets though.
I mean, they were what were they 7-3?
They were 7-3.
They were
7-3. One of the best teams in football. Everybody was oohing and on.
Meantime, what was Jacksonville? 3-7.
3
and made the playoffs.
3-7,
right?
And got to the playoffs. 2-6 somewhere in there. Yeah. Here's what I will say, and this is the part of the schedule that I noticed immediately, and there's certain teams that I was like, I would have liked that a little later in the year, maybe. Your offensive line is going to have to figure out real quick what's going on week 2. That defense, no matter what we think about Tampa,
no matter what we think about the quarterback play,
is still really good. You still got Vita Vea, Akeem Hicks still down there, right? JPP. You still got they add in Kalijah Cansey, who I loved out of Pittsburgh.
Yes,
like that defensive line is still really stout. Guess what? Your line is going to get tested very early on. Then 2 weeks later, you got the Broncos coming in. You know what I mean? And the week after that, you got Washington. Like this is going to be we're going to know right away what this Bears team is going to look like offensively.
Well, you're going to face some pass rushers. I mean, even when you go to Kansas City, you're right about that. You're going to face some pass rushers early on, and let's see how this O-line holds up. I think it's a good point. I think post-bye, their schedule is honestly pretty favorable, and if they can get 6 wins in their first 12 games, like there's no reason. Now, maybe that's being a little bit overly optimistic. Even if they have, let's say, 5 wins at the bye, like they should be one of those in the hunt teams that Jurko always talks about. You've got the Lions at home out of your bye. You're on the road at Cleveland. You got Carolina in a December game at home. I mean, come on. A December game at home against Carolina. Yeah. You got the Falcons at home. I don't think the Falcons are a particularly good football team. And then at Green Bay to end it. So, those last 5, you potentially, if you're playing well, if you're peaking, like Jurko said, they will be an in the hunt team. If you get to your bye, if they get to their bye with 5 wins, they'll be in one of those in the hunt teams, I think.
Here's what I'll ask. So when you look at this schedule, do you feel like this is a favorable schedule for where the Bears are in their rebuild?
Yes.
I think that when we see kind of how it's laid out, right? Like this could have gone bad, right? Like in my mind, I was like, the NFL is going to screw us. We're going to get Chargers, Chiefs, Broncos, all 5 games in a row. The fact that it's spread out, right? Like even the losses that I see in this schedule right now, I mean, I'm probably being really optimistic. I'm still sticking with their floor is 7, their ceiling's 10. Yeah, but I can see 11. I can see how you can get there, right? Because of how things lay out, right? The Cardinals at the end of the year, in my mind, it's like that could be a loss, but also Kyler Murray, I believe, will be back by then. But he's got to come to Chicago off of an injury.
He's coming to Chicago off an injury that's the Christmas Eve game, right?
Christmas.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's Christmas Eve.
That is week before.
Yeah.
No, that is Christmas Eve. Yeah,
right?
That's
Christmas Eve. I mean, come on, now we've had some pleasant Christmas weather, I guess, the last few years. If it's a 50-degree day, it changes. But if you get a more normal December 24th weather day, late in the day too, right? Isn't that a? Oh no, that isn't. Yeah, that's a 3:25.
That's a 3:25 game.
Sun's down. Yep. Within the first 20 by the end of the first quarter.
By the end of the first quarter.
Sun's down. Yeah. That's. Bear weather, I get it. It's largely a myth, but sometimes you have to look at the situation, look at the opponent, and think, "Hey, we've got a built-in advantage that we, here." So
it depends on the team, right? Like bear weather does play a part. We saw that when the Rams came here, when the Rams were unstoppable, and like you saw them on the sideline, and they're bundled up, just like, please, God, just.
I was at that game, and so were Abdallah and Black, and they said, "Oh, wasn't that called?"
Yeah.
No, I was at the game. It was cold.
It was cold for the Rams.
It was cold.
Were you drinking enough is the question.
Well, I was drinking, but I obviously wasn't drinking enough. And when you're standing still, it becomes even worse. And when you're standing on concrete, it becomes even worse.
Yeah, that's the worst. Listen, I've been there, boys. What are your thoughts on kind of how this schedule is going to affect the players on the field, right? Like I said early on, you've got Tampa Bay, you've got Kansas City, who's got a decent pass rush. You've got the Broncos.
Coming out of it, everybody thinks they can win everything. You know, you come out very positive. You come out thinking that you're going to be able to conquer the world. As far as the challenges to the offensive line, they've addressed the offensive line.
Right.
So, yes, playing in the NFL is a challenge. Playing teams it's going to be a challenge. You're not going to get a patsy off a defensive line, every week. You're paid to stop the guys that are across from you.
Yeah.
So I don't concern myself so much with the defensive lines that they're going to be able to face. It'll be about the execution of the offense. I heard you ask Courtney Cronin yesterday, is it the more pressure on Luke Getsy or the quarterback, or will the blame lie one way? Well, first of all, it's too early to lay blame and throw anything out there.
Or accolades.
The season's got to play out.
Yeah.
You got to see it play out. You got to see what's happening. Who will, who won't perform before you can go ahead and start assessing blame and laying blame. Again, early on, they're going to be all psyched up. The more they stay closer to 500, one game above, even one game below, the better off it will be for this team long-term and for the season. If they come out of the gates and they struggle and they're 1-4, okay, guess what? This has got a chance with a young quarterback, with a young team, with coaching staff that obviously hasn't been able to pull anything out of it, where this could go sideways right away.
Yeah,
I don't see that happening. So I see him in the first 5 going 3-2. I see him in the next 5 going 3-2. Or is that the tough stretch where they're on the road?
That's a tough stretch.
That's a tough stretch. You got
maybe 2-3.
Yeah.
So I see him 5-5 after 10, with 7 games left.
Well, then you're in the hunt.
Hopefully they're figuring out what's happening, what's going on. You got to perform. All these guys, Chase Claypool got to perform. Mooney got to perform.
Yeah.
DJ Moore got to perform.
Yeah.
Is it incumbent upon the quarterback and the offense coordinator to put the guys in the best position to play? Absolutely. They're all dependent upon each other to get this thing going in the right direction. Everybody needs everybody else.
You know the advantage they got in the schedule? The Tampa game is in week 2.
Yeah.
Jurko will tell you, their body is still a little bit more acclimated to the weather you're going to experience. Right. You get that game in October or November.
Yeah.
And Jurko for years or December has talked about it. And that is, I factor that into my handicapping for years when Jurko first said it. And I thought about it. I'm like, wow, that's a really good point. And are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, you are.
I was on that. I was in that Tampa stadium 2 years ago when they were there late October.
Yeah.
And,
it's cool here. It's
cool here. And we were down there and the sun came out and it felt like we were on the surface of the fucking sun.
Right.
Now, granted, we're in the last row of the stadium.
You were cooking.
I was worried for our, it was me, Sylvie, and Danny and our 3 boys. Yeah. And Danny and Sylvie went to get concessions and it was me and the boys. I literally was for a few minutes concerned about their safety. I'm like, I've got to get them in some fucking shade.
Yeah.
We're in the Bears sideline, the visitor sideline.
Yeah.
Is cooking in that sun.
Yeah.
I mean, it is miserable. And so that's an advantage when they're a little bit more acclimated.
Tampa, and to a lesser extent, Jacksonville. But Jacksonville can get cooler in December and January because it's 6 hours north of Miami. And it's about 3.5 hours north of Tampa Bay.
It's still hot and muggy.
Yeah. I mean, no, it gets hot and muggy, but those two, you get Buffalo down there late in the year, Seattle, Minnesota. It has to go down to Tampa or it has to go down to Miami. Whoa, I know where the wagers go.
That way too, right? Like they've got the stadium.
They got it protecting themselves.
Yeah, so does Tampa.
Tampa
does too. The sun is setting, and the visitors are in the home team's on the sideline where the sun's going down on the west side of the stadium, and the visiting team. I mean, I
You're
can't.
Exposed.
We're cooking.
Yeah,
I mean, I couldn't. It was late October.
Yeah,
we're in shorts and t-shirts, and the boys are sitting there, and I'm like, I got to get them out of here and get them some water. We need to find shade.
And we got Denver before maybe Sean Payton can get everything implemented at Denver. True. Before his system can get implemented. He's got the offseason.
Denver's week 4.
But until you get it, you hope it's the Denver that struggles. You don't need the magic of Sean Payton to get these guys going going a little bit too early.
I've never seen him do a bad job with a quarterback, and he's got a guy that's got a Hall of Fame career coming into it. For me,
the guy that was terrible last year.
Yes.
A guy that was terrible, a guy that they thought was going to turn Denver around, but he went to Denver, and whatever type of leadership he thought he was going to give him, and whatever philosophies he brought with him, it did not catch with the players. Listen, whether you like it or not, it does not matter what you did with Seattle. You've got to win the players in Denver over now. And the way he was doing it was not winning the players over. Yeah. Right? You got to become just a guy, a dude.
Well, I think
you got to find a way to become embraceable and then to embrace somebody else. And the way he was going about it was not the correct way.
Well, I think that's just kind of who he is, right? Like we heard Beast Mode talk about that. And he literally said, he's like, I got to go through like his agent who's got to go through the PR team for me to just say hi to him. And
that's a problem.
Pat McAfee was breaking it down. He's like, I can FaceTime Peyton Manning right now. Like that shouldn't be the case.
No,
I'm the punter.
Right. But that's the dilemma.
Yeah.
So that's him, though.
Yeah.
That's the individual. That's the guy.
Yeah.
He's the guy that's got to make the adjustment. Everybody doesn't need to adjust to him. He's the one that needs to make the adjustment for everybody else.
Well, let's hope that that works out for us. I do want to get into this.
After they play the Bears.
After they play the Bears. Well, I said, works out for us. Right. I said, let's hope that works out for us.
That they're still ironing out the kinks.
Keep struggling, Russ. Please. Yeah. Keep struggling.
I don't mind.
Because
I hope 31 other quarterbacks struggle, and Justin Fields is the only one that figures it out.
That's what I love to hear. Let's get into this second quarter, because I do want to get into this, right? Like
second quarter.
Realistic breakdown here. Yurt kind of gave his. He's got him 5-5 through 10. When we get to the bye here, what are your expectations on the Chicago Bears? Where do you think that they should be before heading into these last 5 games?
If they're 5-7, like I said, I think that puts them in a somewhat decent position over their last 5 games. At the very least, to make it interesting, where they're gonna be in that graphic week to week as in the hunt in the NFC. Yeah. Let's face it, the NFC we know is not nearly as dominant, and it's going to be a little bit more wide open. And if you're banging around 8 wins, you might have a shot. Yeah. And if you can be 5-7 through your first 12 games, have your bye, and then play 3 of your final 5 at home, if you win those and sneak a game on the road, guess what? You're talking about a team that might make the playoffs. Right. So if they can be 5-7 or better, I don't know. Does that sound about right to you guys? Would we be happy with that?
6-6 is where I have.
You want them 6-6? Okay.
I would.
I mean, you're asking realistically 6-6.
Okay.
What I would be happy with, I can't say I wouldn't be happy with 5-7, right? Because here's the thing. My expectation is that there's going to be still some things that people are going to have to work out. I don't expect this defense to actually be able to stop anybody right away. I think, right, like everybody's talking.
But they're better than they are last year.
They are.
But better than they were last year automatically.
But even week 2, right? Like we've kind of written off Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's still got a really good offensive line down there in front of him. He's still got Tom Brady's offensive line standing in front of him.
Yeah,
and
but that was a dilapidated offensive line last year.
And they're moving Wirfs over too. Yeah, right? They're moving Wirfs
so that's still a work in progress. And I don't know if their center's ever going to come back and be the same guy that he once was. That's true. If he didn't retire in the offseason. So
I can't say 5 and. Here's the thing. I feel like the first 12 games of the season, there's some games on here where I look at them, I'm like, that's probably a loss, right? The Vikings game to me, week 6, I feel like that's probably a loss. I think the Vikings are going to come in here and be on a little bit of a roll. I like the offense. I like Justin Jefferson. I don't know if I like the entire offense, but I can still see that being a win.
I could too.
I can't guarantee that that's a win, so I could see them flipping it one way or the other. 6-6 to me doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility.
But that's the dilemma. I mean, they're going to win games they shouldn't win. They're going to lose games they should win.
Yeah.
So that's why I break it down in 5s.
Yeah.
Break it down in 5s and say, okay, 3-2, 2-3, and then you got to pick it up and put it down, and you got to figure it out in the last 7 games. But I still have 6-6, which means they've got 5 games left.
Right.
And they got to find a way to get to 9 or 10 to be able to win that division. And I do not have the faith in Minnesota going 13-4 again. They're going to correct.
No,
they're going to get either 10 or 9. That's what.
Think about all the one score victories. There's probably going to be some sort of.
We
correction.
broke it down. Yeah, it's obviously correct.
Well, it was crazy. 2 years ago,
7, right?
And Green Bay is going to be as awful as it is because their money comes to them next year. Their dead cap hit with Aaron Rodgers is absorbed this year. Next year is when they get the influx of money that they can go ahead and spend. So this year's for them is just kind of middling around, seeing what they can, what they can't do.
Yeah.
Getting a high draft pick.
Yeah, and Detroit's got to find a way to replicate what they did last year. I mean, they're not going to go 15-2 this year.
They're not going to surprise
they were red hot
either.
last year. They're 8-2 in their final 10.
Yeah,
they're not surprising anybody.
I wouldn't be surprised if Detroit finishes right where they finished last year.
I wouldn't
because of the schedule, because of the increase in difficulty in your schedule coming into this season. Teams now know what to look for. They lost a couple of guys due to a little bit of rolling the dice.
Yeah, they're losing.
Chicanery.
They're losing against Kansas City. Right, opening day, they're losing.
I would think.
Yeah,
they're about a touchdown underdog.
That's not going to be a victory.
I don't think so.
In
Andy
Kansas
Reid with extra time. I mean, you remember the record for Andy with extra time. It's
and really, the biggest problem that they had coming into last season, they didn't address. They didn't have anybody standing next to Aiden Hutchinson. Did they really address that this offseason?
Well, hold on. The guy in the final 8 games.
Yeah. The rookie from last year.
Final 7 games had 8 sacks. Yeah. Houston had 8
7,
sacks.
I think. Wasn't it 7, York, I think?
No.
7 or 8. Maybe it was
8 sacks in the final 7 games.
Yeah.
So, and Hutchinson was the one. I assume he's going to be better in his second year than he was in his first.
Right.
Yeah.
But the one thing he did do, especially against the Bears, is he didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
He was smart enough to play his position.
He's smart.
Not to bite, not to take the bait, and not to do anything. And he just sat there. And though Justin Fields is a wonderful athlete and should be able to run away, not when the guy doesn't bite.
Yeah.
And you got to give their defense a ton of credit, because not allowing Fields to make plays with his legs benefited Detroit against the Bears last year. So, but they got that Houston kid now. They got something.
They addressed their defensive backfield. I'm not a huge believer yet because, to me, I want to see it again. Yurko and I don't love Jared Goff. The numbers were very good at home. There's no doubt. But if you told me, they were still just a 9 or a 10-win team, I'd very much believe it. And I don't think they're so dominant that they're running away. I don't think anybody in the NFC North is running away with the division.
No,
I really don't.
No, I think that we'll all
be
have
a mediocre division.
I think so.
I think we'll all have a shot.
The conference in general, other than the Niners and the Eagles. The Niners are a curious case, too, because of the quarterback situation. But I get that the depth and the talent and the defense are all fantastic. Yeah. Really, other than the Niners and the Eagles, who are we totally sold on? The Cowboys will probably be pretty good again. Giants, maybe. I love the coach. I don't think I love the quarterback there either. Maybe Yurko's been talking about the Rams. Maybe the Rams bounce back.
Well, I said if I was going to put a wager on anybody, I would put a wager on the Rams. But being able to bounce back, getting Aaron Donald back, getting Cooper Kupp back, getting a healthy Matt Stafford back, I'd have more faith in them being able to replicate something they've done before than I would have faith in anything else.
Just other than those top 2 teams that I think we can identify, it really is it's very mediocre, wide open.
Right, it's crapshoot.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for the Bears this season. Here's the thing for me. I think early on in this season, if you can rattle off 2 wins versus some of these teams that we think you're not supposed to beat,
and that
builds a momentum, right? To me, Kansas City to me, I still have as a loss easily. But if you can get a win versus Denver, if you can get a win versus the Vikings, and you come out of your first 6 games 4-2, now all of a sudden everybody in that building's got a little more confidence, got a little more pep in their step, got a little more excited. That's how the 2018 season sparked, right? And I think the most important one, I'm gonna be honest with you, I said this with Courtney yesterday, the most important game for the Bears is week 1. If you win week 1 versus the Packers, Justin Fields' offense looks good. The offensive line looks good. I think that is going to be something that could actually send this team in the right direction.
Something you can build on. Get a little confidence early.
You're not playing Aaron Rodgers.
No, they're not.
Very, very winnable game.
They've lost, eight straight to the Pack, right? I think it's 8 straight.
No. Have we lost 8 straight?
Can't even recall how long it's
Last
been.
time we won was 2018.
2018. The last game of 2018.
A long time ago.
Long time ago.
They lost 8 straight to the Packers.
But
you don't have to deal with Rodgers anymore.
That's true.
Which is a good thing. Their schedule's brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal. I mean, you see their first 6 games, they're favored in 2 of their first 6 games.
Yeah.
As of right now.
That's a tough start to the season.
Brutal.
It's like, hey, guys, you didn't make this schedule with the mindset that Aaron Rodgers isn't here anymore. Hold on.
It is. They got a brutal stretch. So.
Hey, as we get into the halftime segment here, man, anything you guys want to promote? Anything you guys got going on that the people should be looking out for?
Carmen and I are going down to Kentucky next week. Or 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks.
2 weeks from now. 10 days.
A little less. 10 days.
12 days.
What's going on down in Kentucky?
On the Bourbon Trail, baby.
Ooh,
doing a live show at Woodford Reserve.
Okay.
I got people hitting us up on social media wanting to know, can anybody come? I was like, yeah, anybody can come. Woodford Reserve is open to the people.
That's right.
It's a beautiful visitor center. It's a really cool old distillery. Been there for 200 years.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful part of Kentucky.
And we're doing some stuff at Churchill Downs on Wednesday.
Yeah, we are. We're taking some listeners. We got
you're going to be riding on the horses
No
again?
chance.
I've done that once already.
0.0%.
Is that video still up?
I stayed
It's somewhere. It's one
No,
person
that
has it.
video's not up.
I think one person has it.
They didn't want the barristers to get a hold of it.
Yeah. No, they
All
did
right, let's move it to the third quarter.
Third quarter.
So we've kind of talked about this team, right? Like what our expectations of them are in this first 12 games, kind of how we think they can finish the season. Should Bears fans' expectation be that the Chicago Bears are competing for a playoff spot? Should that be our realistic expectation this season? Because for me, right, 7 wins, are you in the hunt all season? Sure. But you're not realistically probably competing for a playoff spot. But if you're talking about 9 wins, if you're now you're competing for a playoff spot. Should that be the expectation?
Oh man. I'm not quite as bullish. So I think they're about a 7 or 8 win team tops. So if I'm wrong, that'd be awesome because then they will be competing for a playoff spot. Should it be their expectation? I don't know. If they get to 7 or 8, to me, you would have taken a step in the right direction, especially if we see maturation and growth from Justin as a passer. Those are things I'll look back on. If that happens, they win 7, they win 8, and Justin throws for 3,700 yards.
Thank you.
then I'll say there was growth and there was development and they're getting better and they feel better about him. And to me, that I think you could walk away saying it was pretty successful. That'd be kind of how I guess judge the season.
So
if it went that way.
taking a step. You're more so just take a step forward.
Yeah.
Understand what Justin Fields is. The playoffs are what they are.
Yes.
Okay. What do you think, Yurt?
They used to play 8 games in their own division. They only do 6 now.
Yeah.
But I still think that's a telltale sign for the way the season will go. So they play before the bye. They play 4 games. If they're 3-1 in those 4 games, before they get to the bye, and I think they've got 2 games after that.
The Lions,
with Green Bay being the last one, and some right after. Yeah. So if they can be 3-1 before that, then I think they're a playoff team. We'll be talking about the playoffs. If they're 2-2, then that you're that 8-win team that Carmen talks about. So I think how they play in the division, and you're going to have Green Bay early. And Minnesota's the next one that you have early.
Minnesota's week 6. Yep.
Yes. And then Minnesota's
very
next.
Spaced out for the division.
Then the 2 Lions games.
Right. Well, they got 2 together before the bye. They play both division games before the bye.
Detroit,
and then they play one right after the bye.
And Detroit again.
Right.
3
straight
so
in the division.
If before the bye they can get there and they can be 3-1 before the bye, then I'm feeling real good about their playoff chances. So the way they play in the division to me is important. Those count to me as double losses because you're winning and the other team in your division is losing,
right? Which
is important. So we'll see how they do. I got them. I'm a little more rosy. Carm's got him at 7-8. I got him at 9, 8, or 10. So I'm 8-10.
Right.
Carmen seems like he's 7-9.
7 or 8, I think.
Yeah, you're right there. So I'm a little bit rosier than Carmen is.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm probably on Carmen's side. And maybe this is just, I think what this realistically is here's the feeling I got legit. I saw the schedule and I said, we can win 10 games. Like I actually can see 10 games we can win, being logical and how I think things are going to fall. But the Bears fan in me is like the line from Avengers is like, don't what? Don't give me hope. Like I feel like that's just how I feel about this team. It's not
that negativity sets.
It's not that I don't see where we can actually get 10 wins. It's that I just don't believe that they're going to go from a 3-win team to a 10-win team in one season.
That's where I need to calm you then and tell you this was a 7-win team last year.
Yeah,
that underperformed and only won 3 games.
Right.
So I think this is a 7-win team that if they perform better than expected can become the 9th win team. So there you go. There it is right there. To me, I can look at that thing and give you 7 losses.
Yeah.
And of those 7 losses, they might be able to find a way to win 2 games. So
that's
right. So
that's exactly how I feel as well. Like all of the now the ones and
I would still make them 10-7 though.
I said this even when I talked about we didn't know how the games lay out and if it was going to be favorable or not. The games that I'm pretty sure they're going to lose, I'll give them 1 Vikings game maybe, 1 Lions game maybe. But outside of that, the Chargers and Kansas City are my guaranteed losses this season.
Those look like losses. You know the last time they won in New Orleans? 1991. Tough place for the Bears to
bringing that
and
better's logic.
And Green Bay used to go down there and beat New Orleans all the time, even when they were better than us.
Really?
93, we beat New Orleans. We used to go down there and have a party in New Orleans. Yeah. I think it's because Favre liked being back down close to home.
Yeah, I can see that.
So Favre liked to have himself a party down there.
Point.
Yeah, Kansas City's a loss. That's the only one I know for sure. Yeah, Chargers certainly a loss. I'm looking at it right now. Chargers a loss. On the road is where if you're going to look like at Minnesota.
Yeah.
Okay, I could pen at Minnesota as a loss.
Monday night game for Minnesota too.
Maybe at Detroit. Yeah. You could pen as a loss. So okay, there's my 5-6 losses that I have. But after that, I mean, the Falcons aren't any good. Cardinals aren't any good.
And here's the wild
Cleveland to me is okay with a decent pass rush. You're playing at Cleveland. I went to a game Cleveland where Peanut Tillman was in coverage and gave up 2 touchdowns late, and the Bears found a way to lose a game in Cleveland that I went to with a bunch of the guys.
Yeah,
both touchdowns scored in our end zone, both on just crappy fade patterns that the receiver came down with the ball. That disgusted me a little bit, but that's the way it happens someday. At Washington's winnable. That's not
at Washington.
No, that defense is good, but
that pass rush is good.
But remember what the Bears did to them last year when they stunk.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too, right? Like I look at this. I do agree with you that, right? If we go into last season with Khalil Mack, with Akeem Hicks, with Robert Quinn, you've still got Roquan Smith on that defense. You're going to find a way to 6 or 7 wins. I do believe that, especially with how many 1-score games we lost. But is this talent now that much better than that team? I think maybe you're back to par.
I think the offensive talent's considerably better.
Yeah.
I hope I'm right about that.
it goes into what Justin's going to be able to do as well, right? Like that's the step that we need to see.
He's got to take a step, but they did just about everything possible to eliminate excuses for him and to add and support him. I mean, they really did.
They got a number 1 wide receiver. Yeah. They added another receiver at the 4th round. Claypool obviously has to do something this year.
They signed a tight end.
That was terrible.
They signed a guard.
Yeah, Tanya. They signed.
I love Tanya. I'm not gonna lie.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, they've added 5 pieces out of say 14 pieces.
Yes,
because receivers count. When you go 4 wide receivers, they count a little bit too. So they've added 5 of 14 pieces to be able to address the offensive line.
Yeah,
you had 4 question marks across your defensive line. They addressed 2 of them. Now they signed other guys in free agency that aren't necessarily studs. They've upgraded the linebacking core, right?
Well, that they did, but
they upgraded, but they also addressed the defensive line is what I asked them to do, and they did.
Yeah.
Somewhat with free agents, with the journeymen that are going to be able to come in and be part of a rotation, because you can't count on 2 rookies playing 100% of the downs, but you can count on 2 rookies playing 40% of the downs. Which is not a problem.
What I'll ask you is there a guy on this defensive line that makes life easier for the other linemen?
Is there a Reggie White here? No.
Well, not even that much, right? But is DeMarcus Walker a guy that makes the rookies' lives a little easier? I don't know if we have that guy that's going to transition that defensive line and make things easier. Maybe it is Javon Dexter.
Aaron Donald makes life easier for anybody else.
For Leonard Floyd, yeah.
But who on the Minnesota Vikings offensive line in the early 90s made life easier for who?
On the offensive
did Dolman make life easier? Yeah, did Dolman make life easier for John Randall?
Or vice
did Henry
versa?
Thomas make life easier for everybody else?
Yeah.
Did Randall do it for everybody else? Was it Roy Barker coming off the corner that made it easier for everybody else? So who made that line better for anybody? No, they all helped each other.
Yeah.
All those guys were kind of equal. Dolman's
2 of them are in the Hall of Fame.
I was going to say.
Right, I think Dolman's in the Hall of Fame.
Yes, absolutely.
But Henry Thomas didn't need anybody's help.
Yeah.
Henry Thomas wasn't relying upon John Randall so he could rush the passer. Henry Thomas was his own guy. Right. Roy Barker did what he did off the corner. It wasn't anybody helping. If you paid attention to one guy, the other guys were going to kill you.
Yeah.
So that's what you've got to get to. And boy, I didn't realize, when you start talking about that. At the time, though,
how good they were.
They weren't Hall of Famers. At the time, they were just guys. They became Hall of Famers later on.
Jurko just convinced himself 2 more guys need to go into the Hall right now.
They were good, though.
Yeah. But no, you go across other defensive lines, and, who was helping who? No, if you got studs out there, then did Charles help Leon Lett, or did Leon Lett help Charles Haley? Yeah. Russell Maryland was on that line. Chad Hennings was on that line.
Charles Haley helped.
If you get 4 good, solid defensive linemen, guess what? You're going to be in pretty good shape. We don't know what the hell we have now. We know we drafted them highly. Yeah. Now we're going to see what they're able to do when they come into the defense playing a penetrating one-gap defense. So,
Zach Pickens and Javon Dexter are going to be huge.
You got defensive backs now, and one of those defensive backs may have been drafted to replace Jalen Johnson.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which one interception of Jalen Johnson's was your favorite?
I say the same thing.
Which one?
The one.
Yeah, the only one.
I say the same thing.
I want $20 million a year. I want $20 million a year for my one interception.
I was trying to defend him last season. It was against AJ Brown. I'm like, listen, he didn't give up a touchdown. It's like he gave up 185 yards.
I'm going to teach you Croatian. You know what Lakanoch means?
Good night.
Good night. Good night. That's when Jalen Johnson comes to the bargaining table this year. Unless, he performs.
Yeah.
Kyle Fuller performed. You talked about that Green Bay game in 2018.
Yeah.
Who got hit right in the chest in 2018 in that game?
Kyle Fuller.
Could have brought it in for 7.
Could have won the game.
Could have brought it in for 7 right there.
That was the opener.
It was
18,
a 3-3.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, you talked about it earlier.
Oh, no, that was the opener in 19. That was when they lost 10-3.
Yeah.
Right?
Was that 19?
That
where
was,
it hit him right in the chest and he dropped the ball?
I think so.
They like to open the season.
They do. It might have been the opener in 18.
And it was in Green Bay.
I think that's 18 because I think we actually could have won the game off of it.
I think it was 3-3 at the time.
It was, but I think it was the opener in 18. Yeah. So and he got overpaid.
Jalen Johnson, of course he did. Yeah. He had the 1 year with 7 interceptions and then fell off the face of the earth for him. He had 2 interceptions on that cold day against our guy that's in Detroit now, the quarterback.
Goff.
Yeah.
Sure, Goff.
He had 2 off of Goff in that game that the Rams didn't want to be on the field. They didn't want to be here.
No. Yeah.
They wanted to be gone. So we'll see. Listen, I'm not cheering against Jalen Johnson. I want players to get paid.
Yeah.
If you come out here and you have yourself a 7-8 interception year and a bunch of passes defense, then you know what? Paid that man.
Yeah.
Paid that man his money. Okay? I've got no problem.
You go a little mafia on us?
No, he's going ring
rounders.
It's
Teddy
KGB,
Teddy
baby.
KGB.
Pay
the man. I got no problem paying the man.
Beats me.
But you got to perform. You got to perform on the field. If you're going to get paid, you got to perform. That's what I want.
Boys, let's finish it out on this. Let's get to the fourth quarter. Quick segment here because I know y'all got a very important show.
We do have an important show.
Fourth quarter.
What are your plans for opening Packers weekend? You got to work.
Yeah, I'll be here.
You'll be working a little bit.
I'll be here with bells on.
My plans, well, especially because it's a later afternoon kick. I mean, it sets up nicely that time of year to do a little grilling, a little smoking, have some friends over to the house.
Weed, smoke a little weed.
Smoke a little weed. Smoking food.
Oh!
I
thought you were going cigars. I was going to at least give you cigars.
Smoking a brisket or a pork shoulder.
You live in Illinois, kid. It's legal. What are you worried about?
You know
what are you worried about?
Barbecue and a little smoking. Fire up the smoker.
I got you.
Get some grub going. Watch the noon kicks.
Yeah.
Have the 2 TVs set up, watch some of I action, and then kick everybody out and watch the Bears game.
That's the way you do it.
You're watching it solo? You're a solo with the Bears?
You give everybody Das Boot.
I like to watch solo normally, but if you invite a few of the buddies over, that's cool. They can stay for the Bears.
But you got to tell them to shut their mouth when the game's on.
Shut up.
Don't talk when the game's on. Shut up. Don't ask questions. I don't want to answer it.
That's the way it's setting up for me anyway. That sounds perfect.
What's the whiskey of choice that day?
That's a hard question to answer now. Yeah. Oh, it's true. Yeah, it'll probably be bourbon. That's true. But I think he means which.
Opening game,
bourbon.
Michter's birthday.
Michter's, huh? Michter's.
No, Carmen, let's go with
Woodford
Reserve.
That's Old Forrester's birthday.
Hey, let's go with Woodford Reserve.
Little Woodford Reserve. How about a little
how
about another Brown Forman product? A little Old Forester 1920 sounds good to me.
Prohibition.
We could do a little Prohibition. It's got some kick to it. It's got some oomph. Perfect pairing with barbecue.
Is it about 120? What is that one? That one's got some juice in it.
It's like 115, I think.
115 proof. Hello, how are you?
Yeah, it's quite good.
I got to kick it with these guys on a football game.
Over to the house. I have a Captain and Coke.
Captain and Coke, keeping it simple.
By the way, the schedule does work out for the good kid this year. I just want you to know that.
How so?
How so?
It's broken up for me this year. Instead of having 10 straight noon games to finish the season, it's broken up with some Thursday nighters, some Sunday nighters, where you can go ahead and maybe schedule a little something. The Chargers play Sunday nights. So I could take my Vegas trip right before Halloween, play a little bit of golf like I did last year. Yeah. Take off Tuesday night, get to Vegas on Tuesday night.
Look at you.
Carmen, you want to come? We'll invite you along.
Maybe.
What do you think?
Maybe. I think we're taking the kids to Kansas City for Bears Chiefs.
You're doing the Kansas City?
You're doing Kansas
think we
City?
are. I think Sylvia
Week 3?
already booked week 3.
Week 3.
It's a good time to go to Kansas City.
Thought about New Orleans.
That's
a
great time.
Can't bring the kids to New Orleans, though.
No,
that's not a kid's trip.
That's not a kid's trip.
I would just
that's
like
a guy's
to go.
Trip, though.
That's a guy's trip.
I might do New Orleans.
Good time of year, too.
We were talking about that last night. Which trip do we want to take?
The men's club out of Southside, the Samurais. I think they're going to New Orleans for their year trip.
Good trip.
Their
good time of year.
Trip. Yeah.
First weekend in November.
Cool here. It's autumnal here,
but it'll be nice there.
It'll be beautiful in New Orleans. Absolutely. They got a nice casino.
We're talking about football so early in the season, but it never dies. I love it. The schedule's out. Ladies and gentlemen, let us know your predictions in the comments below. What you think this team is going to do. As always, it's your boy Pat the Designer, joined by Carmen Jurko of the Carmen and Jurko Show, which they have to go do. So we got to get out of here. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Big Bear Don. Peace.